Sup Shredders, my name is Logan aka Spiderhands and welcome to SP Reviews, where today we have ourselves an album titled Art Inspired Tracks, the Complete Trilogy Remastered from an actor named Glenn Murawski. And if we switch over to here, we have ourselves the album on Bandcamp. Now this is a big album. It's basically, 21 tracks. And I'm gonna be reviewing this in two parts. You're gonna get the whole video in one, but I'm gonna be listening to this in two recording sessions just so that I don't burn out. I'm gonna be doing 11 tracks in the first session and then the rest of the 10 tracks in the next. I'll probably do them all today as of the time of recording this, but just I want to split them up so I don't have too much that low energy stuff, because that's not good, is it? Here's the album art here, just in case you want to check it out, and we're gonna listen through this album from start till finish, and we're gonna hear what we think. Let's go, stalwart and ready for battle. It's nice to have these synth sequences in amongst the string plucks. Those are interesting combinations. By the way, while I remember, this album compilation is comprised of music I made inspired by art pieces that stood out to me. The artwork which inspired associated tracks are listed and linked below where applicable. So these aren't about his personal experiences, these are about like how art has affected him and his interpretations of them. Just wanted to point that out. In fact, what we could do, just so that you can actually see the art, we'll just start the track again so you can kind of like hear it in perspective, but yeah, I'll put the art on this side so you can check it out as we go. Synth sequences with strings. Oh. Those are some hella powerful drum samples though, eh? I mean, like, there's a bit of tension to the harmony there, you know. It sounds a little bit uncertain, but it sounds like we are ready for battle. I can kind of imagine a dude with like a shield and a battle axe ready, or for like a hammer ready for battle, you know. Kind of considering his movements. Yeah, we're very comfortable like sitting on these themes where like we have these particular textures and we just kind of maybe have them as sort of as an aesthetic for the entirety of the track. Oh, brass though. Wasn't expecting us to raise like this, to be honest, but I'm not necessarily averse to that. Interesting rhythm with offbeat accents to those string parts there, to those bows. Raising, ascending of the melodies. Cool idea. Even though we've had similar instruments throughout, and similar rhythms for the way they're phrased. Apart from the drums here, of course, where we have this big shift. Are we having arguments between the different rhythms of the individual instruments, or are we finding a sense of unity here? Oh, we've got like 16ths or something like that going on the drum kit with triplets on like the strings. That's a spicy topic. Doesn't always work that well, but it's going okay here, to be fair. I mean, it's incredibly busy with all the different percussive elements, like different tom fills and stuff like that, but like, it does indicate the tension and the drama of the battle. Like strength there, you know. I can hear the connection between the art and the music. Great. Well, what I should also mention is that this trilogy is off of 3 different albums, hence the trilogy. So maybe actually what I'll do today is I'll do one session where I review the first album, then this volume 2, and then volume 3, and that'll make it so I definitely don't go low energy at any point. That sounds like a smart idea to me. So we'll continue with number 2. I'll just get the art up in a minute. But I was really happy with the first track. It's a fantastic introduction to his work for anyone who's uninitiated. Where Even the Monsters Cry, number 2. Oh, this artwork is obviously a lot more sadistic than what we might be used to. Nope, I don't think we can get away with making that smaller. Now make me smaller. No. Oh, Newgrounds. It's alright. It's very tense and uncomfortable here with these really kind of awkward... Oh. Oh, those synths are... They're making more musical sense now because... Oh, a parallel minor for that triad there? It sounds demented and very coarse, you know. It's definitely not a comfortable listening experience, but I don't think music needs to be. Where even the monsters cry. It does sound like these strings are crying out to you in these harmonies of the damned. There was incredible like low layers there which really kind of bristled against the sound of everything else. I mean, like these percussive samples here are a great shift from what we had earlier, giving a little bit more context. A little bit of glitchiness there as well, a little bit of modulation of the original peaks themselves. It's nice to have that original theme put on top of the drums now as well. You know, separately they're fine to listen to, but to get that amalgamation at the end is very satisfying. There's different rhythms for different instruments within the overall arrangement, which makes them all stand out. It's nice and wide in the stereo field with some percussive in out on the outer edges. And because they're not necessarily playing with traditional major or minor key signatures, as well as these really kind of awkward kind of sounds to these parts within the composition, it really is a kind of like ethereal experience. Incredibly intense there. It does sound like the monsters are crying, but it also sounds like the hellscape that they're placed in is incredibly depressing, and it justifies it, you know. Very different from Stalwart and Ready to Battle for Battle. So you can tell that these artworks inspired Glenn dearly, you know, and I'm thankful that we get the opportunity to learn more about how he views this stuff, you know. And it's great that he can transform that into art of his own. And then we have The Essence of the Moon, track number 3. We have this very slow synth with this really slow attack to it, slowly gazing its way around the stereo field, or soaking up the center with a glimmer to it. Like a windiness and airiness to it that's kind of otherworldly. Great modulation of that vocal chop line there. I like it when people use people and what they say as an instrument. Like those chants are, especially with how it's harmonizing with the pads. And it makes it sound so like a tribal experience. Like the essence of the moon is actually the moon god or something like that. The groove there with those bass synths on the bottom, man. Those stabs, how they punch you. They parasite you, dude. Hell yeah, man. This is some dope stuff. Yeah, great use of kind of like a lazy, lackadaisical kind of synthly, kind of slumbering over top. Yep, great. The basses kind of like salvaged themselves at the end, became a little more kind of friendly just for us to cut out with the tails of the different synth instruments and stuff like that, kind of flatlining and kind of going away into the ether. And I think it's wonderful. It's, you know, it was a very magical experience listening through that track. And I can understand how the art relates to the music and vice versa. It's good. It's really great so far. 3 for 3 as far as I'm concerned. There's a really neutral harmony in there as well, which I appreciate, like a motif. Oh, whoops, that's a swing and a miss. So the link for the fourth track, State of Refuge, does not exist on Newgrounds anymore, the place where I've been looking at stuff. So we're just going to not have artwork for this fourth track, but that's fine, you know. That's what happens, you know, like people will put artwork up and then they might think, oh, I want to correct it, you know, or do something different, then they'll put it under a different link, you know. But I might let Glenn know about that after I do this review. It's very, very atmospheric with just that little ding there with the long reverb change with the flourishes of the other synth sequences floating around the stereo field, going from left to right. There's little flutes and synth leads there. So there's a conversation going back and forth, you know, a state of refuge. I've just hang on. I've just realized this isn't me showing this image like of the dogs as like a thing about the review. This is just that this is the background of my web browser. Basically, I just figure it's better to have something there than nothing, you know. Yeah, don't worry. This isn't like a part of. Yeah, this is just my web browser's like homepage. Is the little animated dogs. Okay, so we've got like more of a kind of like an otherworldly vibe, like we're going through space or something like that. Almost like we've taken something, we're tripping out a little bit. Like we're trying to find safety, but at what cost? Oh, there was oomph in that low end there, a great natural bass resonance there, with lovely panning of the flutes on top. Some of the most incredible instrumental music I've actually heard this year, actually, if I'm completely honest. Like, it's very creative. There are textures and harmonic ideas I wouldn't expect. The fact we're allowing this to float without a need for like a central kind of groove aside from a 1, 2, 3, 4 with some reverse takes is fantastic. Like, there's a general state of ambiguity, though, with the way that it's phrased harmonically with its chord progressions. Like, there's flourishes and, like, mysterious textures, and everything's kind of, like, very pad-oriented. And the way that things go backwards and forwards in stereo field doesn't necessarily sound as if it finds a conclusion, but it's nonetheless very engaging and enthralling, in part due to the strangeness of it, you know. I nonetheless enjoyed it. State of refuge could be someone find peace within themselves outside of all the chaos going on in the outside world, I'm not sure. So we found Rune's artwork for Ruins in the Darkness. Having this cello or this low instrument here is a fantastic choice here. Or is that like a bassoon or a trombone or something like that? Or just like a low bass synth? It's incredibly ominous, dude. It's very overwhelming. And these noise synths here, they kind of come in like demented explosions, are just wonderful. I mean, the lead on the side is an unusual decision because usually it's in the center. It kind of throbs against your eardrums on your left ear, you know? I don't necessarily mind it. You can hear the bowing of the actual strings themselves. They sound wonderful. Hell of an entrance with that bass drum though. Like honestly, like the dynamic range of this recording is really, really great. They're like gunshots, aren't they? with those occasional like claps or like clangs on the rim of a snare or something like that, it's very, very tense. You feel as if you're in danger because of the textures alone, never mind the ominous nature of the minor scale we've got the bass line in. But what are we going to do for the next half of the song at the same time? So halfway now, how are we going to develop it further? Ah, excellent. So we're broadening the stereo field to include the right side as well, with these higher notched, higher octave kind of like synth pads. I kind of appreciate the courage to have more than one like that. You know, having more than one. Well, I mean, I suppose that'd be more of a like a string lead, wouldn't it? Oh, it's going over both sides now. Very, very it's a little bit ambitious, but I dig it. It's almost hypnotic. It's like you're walking through each door and the doors never end of the dungeon you're in. Oh, a little bit extra brightness and a little bit of assassin at upper range. Honestly, like if I haven't said it already, Glenn Murawski could totally get into video game music. I think they do an exemplary job of it. There are some people I listen to and I think, you know, definitely continue building your music career, but also cinema or like video game music. I still think this is like a time and place for orchestral scores, especially nowadays with a greater respect and tolerance for electronic elements within arrangements, you know, within performances. But obviously, you know, now bear in mind, I've actually got to check that it's a split 7/7 each way because it might actually be more than 7 per album. No, it's 7 per track. So each of these albums, you know, art-inspired tracks, volume 1, 2, and 3, each have 7 tracks. So that's great, you know, no issues with that whatsoever. I think this track did kind of show a very kind of uncomfortable, dangerous environment within it. Someone within it was walking through it wanting some light and wanting a little bit of support because it was a little bit overbearing for them. That's what the tone of the track gave me. I think the combination of the kind of like gunshot-esque kind of like, you know, those sounds with the low bass and the synths and the pads and stuff like that, there weren't a whole lot of layers in the arrangement, but they were nevertheless effective, and I left a track like this in nearly 5 minutes feeling like there was absolute no filler. Apparently the art for this 6th track, Don't Look Back, is unavailable as well, which is a shame, but it's what it is, you know. This is sounding hella intense, dude. Oh, it was almost like we just got off a big like electric train or something like that. Where are we going? Like, what's the source, man? What's the precedent being set? Again, lots of use of the sequences. Loving those sort of those kind of like the basic kind of sequences with the repeated string parts, instantiating a reliable rhythm to follow along with. Lots of intriguing stuff going on with the drums as well. I mean, like, interesting floor tom, or like tom movement as well. dun 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 dun. Kind of working within the triads of the triplet kind of string bows. With more sequences on top on the left side and the high end to kind of like balance it all out and have a sense of unity between the elements alongside some contrasting whole note pad parts. Tonally, like harmonically, there is a sense of unity between the various elements across the triads. At a short track, I'm not surprised. We went with a little bit harder than this than we might usually. Oh, there are some notes within some of those ideas there. Da da dun dun, da da dun dun dun, ba ba ba. There are some elements within those individual melodic concepts, which may not be within a similar scale, where some of those notes may occasionally grind each other the wrong way. It's very subtle. But it sounds like they could, if Glenn Murawski wasn't as competent as they were as a composer, they could have rubbed each other the wrong way, but we managed to avoid that. That's why you want to kind of keep everything within the same scale if possible. Have a sense of like a lot of consistency you see across your composition. Unless you're deliberately going for that effect of having a little bit of kind of like strangeness to the harmonies and everything like that. Bum 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 bum. It's just the catchiest hell groove. Dun 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 dun. You can nod your head to it, appreciate it. At 2 minutes 56, it's nice and short, both in a 2 to 4 minute sweet spot. Good job. Don't look back. Yeah, it does kind of tell you. It does kind of sound like, hey, don't look back. You just got to keep moving forward. Just keep moving. That's the sound that I got from that dun 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 dun. It's just keep moving forward and don't allow yourself to get caught up by your past, by whatever's chasing you. Great song. And then finally, as the last track of the original art-inspired Volume 1, we have got Dark Covenant in the Violet Woods with the art over here. Inspired from Zeit, new Rammstein single. So that's good to know. Oh, that low end, controlled by those strings or whatever the hell it is fantastic. Very kind of like gloomy, moody. That vibrato and the flute there is just absolutely sensational. Oh, that's a tricky chord to go to. Yeah, we're trying to find a way to continue to elongate it by not resolving to the major or minor relatives. It's a smart move, don't get me wrong. Yeah, coming in with these drum samples here, the electronic kit. Give a bit of extra context with some 16ths in there, maybe potential 30 seconds. Okay, we've got some complicated intervals going on here. Between these chords here, there's a great deal of emotional complexity to the way they sound, which makes up for a relative lack of layers within the arrangement. The percussion is nice and varied. Okay, additional string layers, good choice. New way to kind of elongate this track, elevate it. Sounds like you're like the climax of a drama, right? Oh, fun. This is kind of what I needed. We were very familiar with the strings and the woodwind. There's a flute or like an oboe or like a clarinet or something like that. And then again, the lows, the sub bass that was in the start. And having a synth in that mid-high range just kind of carries us over the finish line. Because like, oh, brightness, oh, engagement. You know what I mean? Like, it's just boom. Something else that is equally as energetic but in a different range. Oh, it's kind of demented and twisted, isn't it? Is there distorted guitar in there as well? Because if there is, nice touch, dude. Is that in the center field? Music's so fun these days, isn't it? I just put the art up for a little bit just so you guys can see that before we take a break between now and volume 2 of this review. So like I'm assuming this woman is like a threat or something like that. You're enamored, but you also got to be careful. Excellent and fantastic reverb tail on the outro. These first 7 tracks, including Dark Common and Violet Woods, from the artwork that I've seen, I can understand how Glenn got the inspiration for it. They're wonderfully composed. I look forward to talking about that more in the conclusion section of this video. But for now, I'm going to take a break and come back for volume 2 just in a minute. See you soon. And we're back. We're back for volume 2 of our art-inspired tracks. The second part of the trilogy. We're going to be listening through tracks 8 to 14 now, and then I'm going to take another break and we're going to do 15 to 21. But let's start with The Purging Begins. We'll just find the artwork and we're straight into it. I just want to mention as well that Glenn did actually mention down below in the links to the images that some of them weren't there, like number 6. So I'll keep an eye out for those for future ones. But we found art. The Purging Begins. So let's continue. Track number 8. Very creepy off the bat, isn't it? Very unsettling with these kind of distorted, kind of like malevolent choirs and the synth kind of rising up like that and oscillating like that. It's very, very aggressive. The Purging Begins. It kind of does sound like you're being overwhelmed by the music, led into like the woods to be taken care of. Great. I'm glad that we've had these really energetic drums come in, as well as that synth sequencer there, to kind of break up the ambiguity that we had before, you know? Not that I necessarily mind, I don't necessarily mind when we have a situation where we aren't sure what's going to happen next, but because that could be unpredictable and that'd be great, but just there was quite a lot in terms of loudness, in terms of like kind of raw textures. A little bit of a majorist tone to some of these triads here, these arpeggios. But it's really creative with the different instruments and how we're, you know, choosing them. I I would say it would have taken quite a while for Glenn to kind of curate all these different sounds for the use within this record. You know what I mean? Doesn't sound like a Purge. Kind of sounds like a video game Purge, just some of those instruments that don't have textures of some of the 90s synth I'm familiar with in like PlayStation games and all that. Oh. Those 7th chords, those harmonies there, are fantastic. The parallel majors and minors we have there are charming, and the glow of it. It's like we're being disintegrated into the digital ether. I mean, like I have a love for sequences, and I like how we can create a sense of unison with the different percussive elements as well. To kind of, even though it's a 1, 2, like it is a very slow tempo to it overall. We're kind of breaking it up into 16th or even 32nd note chord compartments. That gives it a feeling of being slow and fast at the same time and reasonably chaotic. I don't know if I'd necessarily say there was a step up in the production quality or anything like that between the two tracks. There's lots of stuff going on with the way that we change the perceived loudness and the of these different loops that are coming in and sort of drilling into the headphones in the stereo field. Like they're waves that are passing by. It's very creative. Take a lot of time to be able to get the hang of doing this kind of stuff. I have to admire it. And then track 9 is apparently a painting done by a friend, so there's not art for that one, but that's fine. Not everything needs to be inspired, but by Newsgrounds art. Again, a little bit more gentle than we had previously, although lots of stuff sprinkled around the stereo field with those little plucks in the low end. I have to adore the crispness of the sound of those plucks there. They sound very fresh. Are those plucks there, the dull thuds, are they leveled properly? I don't know if those are too loud or not. They're verging on being a little bit too loud. They poke out at you. The sound design is cool, but they're a bit blunt for my tastes. I'm getting distracted by the sharpness of those plucks from the rest of the environment, which is not necessarily ideal. It would have been interesting to see what artwork inspired this. I know it was a painting by a friend, but maybe the friend was feeling a bit shy, didn't want to show it, which is fine. Are those natural harmonics on a guitar, actually? Because the fact they always remain in the center despite... Is that the falcon in the center? The regal falcon. Respectable. Bold and strong. Oh. That was a dark turn harmonically I wasn't expecting. It sounds like something bad is about to happen to the falcon. I mean, synth pads aren't a bad decision here. I mean, I can get behind that. There's all these sub layers, these little twinkles sprinkled into the stereo field. They're glistening in the higher layer like stars in the sky. That's quite wonderful. It does sound mysterious and incredibly ambient, and I almost wonder how to join the first two tracks together. You know, The Purging Begins to this. They are literally just inspirations from artwork, you know. Not that that's just a thing, you know, like it's incredible that we're able to make music from that inspiration, but... And we've got clearly instantiated themes that we're returning back to, whether it's the chord progressions or the legato passages on the strings or the plucks on the middle instrument. Incredibly relaxing though, all around. Oh, yeah, there's tension there. I think there's a parallel minor there. That's why that's so dark, is that it's unexpected within the key signature. I mean, there's a bit of heft to this track, and it really is a state of observing rather than trying to move forward, as opposed to The Purging Begins, where there was a lot of movement from the freneticism of the different rhythms of the synths and the drums and everything like that. It was a bit more peaceful in this one, a little bit more sort of introspective. And now for track number 10, Dragon Cloud Castle. With the artwork on the left side here looking very, very spiffing, if I may say myself. It's very pretty. Very pretty colours on that artwork. Can I make that bigger? I don't know if I can. Nope, it does not want to get bigger. It wants to stay in ratio. That's fine. Oh, it's DeviantArt. It's not, that's it. It's different. That's alright. It's very regal off the bat. As opposed to The Purging Begins, where we had sharper textures kind of poking at us, or even still Falcon, we had the blunt kind of plucks. We have synth pads and other synth textures kind of oomping in from the sides. I like how gentle it is. I mean, like, it's like we're trying to build a world within a song. It's not necessarily for the need to tell a story. It's not necessarily for the need to teach someone a message. It's to basically the listener to accept a premise of a universe that exists within a wave form, you know. I mean, like, there's unison notes there. We're articulating our extensions, if there are any, or our triads in a way that's very competent. We're ascending to higher notes when need be to kind of make the top edges pop. There's very little to complain about. Isolate. Oh? Now that was an unexpected texture. I'm not necessarily sure if I'm a fan of how sudden that string is there, whether it's a cello or another one. The buzz there, it's almost a little bit too resonant for my tastes. It's like we've instantiated soft textures for most of the track, and then we feel the need here to bring in something a bit more kind of aggressive or even assertive. It's not a bad decision, or it doesn't display incompetence. It's more... It just kind of sounds like a little bit of an awkward entrance, if I'm honest. I mean, like, the ideas on the strings themselves as lead instruments harmonize well, or reasonably well, with the rest of the accompaniment. I'm not sure what the strings here are trying to tell us, I suppose, is another thing. Like, what are they adding here, aside from variety? I mean, they're mixed well, they sound great within their own textures and within their own selves. They have an identity and a profile that I don't particularly mind. It's just making it work so that the entire journey throughout the song makes sense within the various transferences and all that. And I'm not sure if having both of those instruments at the same time coming into that last third of the song was necessarily the best option. But it's good. I enjoy Dragon Cloud Castle. I can imagine ascending a tower. I'm just not sure what would happen at the end. And for track number 11, Lunar Maelstrom, I think we've actually got Glenn Murawski here with a 5-star, if I'm not mistaken. You can see here it's a very similar image to what we have here in the cover. So that's cool. It's never a bad thing to go and explore different artists and creatives on a website and give them feedback and let them know when they're appreciated. But Lunar Maelstrom, track number 11. Oh, it's heavy as hell, man. The brass section, that low end, is resonant and really it strikes a pose immediately. It lets you know it's not going anywhere soon. It's not going anywhere soon. Do I think that works with the title of Lunar Eclipse? I think the art itself is stunning, and it's fascinating to me that people draw stuff like this. I've never really been to Newgrounds, but it seems like somewhere that's worth checking out. Great to have that organ come in if it's a spiritual experience going up to the moon allowing ourselves to be absorbed by it or try to absorb the moon itself. Let that happen. Bum, 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 ba, bum. Kind of sounds like swarms of bees, you know. Really angry swarms of bees. And we're modulating those phrasings there, you know. We're not just sitting on it and just adjusting it each time. And whether they're synths or like actual flutes in the background kind of bring it up there are wonderful, you know. Na, 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 na. Yeah, I mean, I can sing along to it. The themes are relatively easy to follow and accessible. It does sound like a maelstrom, like a hell of a mess. And these kind of Transformers-esque kind of cinematic drums are just the bomb, man. Great use of a flam there as well on the orchestral drums. Oh, we're going for some triplets? An adjustment of the main groove was unexpected, especially with the legato of the brass on top there. There's a great amount of drama here, you know. It's very feisty. We're just going to keep going up? I suppose we are, as things reach higher and higher into the atmosphere. Climax towards the Big Bang. So we're coming down from that though? Or we're sitting at that upper level? I'm not sure. I'm trying to figure out the dynamic range as well as the flow of the overall intensity of the track. Because I suppose you couldn't really keep it at that oomph for the whole entire minute, because otherwise just a lot of tension that doesn't necessarily get rewarded. Boom. 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 The accents on the whole notes are fantastic. And to have that organ reconnect here was unexpected, but I don't necessarily mind it. I think there's always a place for an organ. First, we need like a haunting kind of layer on top of all the other craziness going on within the composition. But I think that the brass theme here that we had does portray what's going on in that image well, like, you know, the lunar eclipse, the dragon trying to eat the moon. It cut a bit sharply there. It cut a bit sharply. It would have been nice if we'd let the organ kind of like rinse out a little bit. So it's what it is. Just would have been nice to have that reverb tail kept on the organ. Even if you added some like reverb in post, just or a delay, just to kind of help it kind of tune out a bit more. But it's fine. That's still a great track. We're over the halfway point now, which is wild, man. It's wild, dude. We've just been smashing through it. So we have Black Swan 2, or Lady in Black, for the track. Oh. Vocal chops with a harp. Not particularly averse to it, if I'm honest. It's very peaceful aside from maybe a little bit, maybe having the, I don't mean to pause, well actually I do mean to pause, just so I can concentrate because there's a lot going on in the composition. Maybe having the oohs not be as loud, or having like less of them, or having like a bit more fill to kind of smooth them out might have been good there. It just sounded like everything was kind of the same loudness for a moment. regardless of whether or not it was panned in the stereo field. And I don't know if that was, I'm assuming that was a deliberate thing considering the quality of the production in general, but Lady in Black. Are we doing a polyrhythm? Like, are we doing a polyrhythm? I thought we were gonna go like da 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 bum bum. Like we're gonna have two different instruments play different rhythms on top of each other, but loop back into the end of the bar. That would have been kind of dope. Or within the space of 2 or 3 bars, you know. I mean, there is dynamic range to this. There's changes in the different lattices of the various instruments, and there is clearly there's clearly attention to detail. It's creating depth by like getting those reverb tails in there and stuff like that. Yeah. Okay, I mean, the strings here, they come in sometimes and they're a little bit sharp, but I like the throatiness of it. I think when the mid-low range kind of like resonance there adds a glow to the track that might not otherwise be there. I'm just not sure what it adds to the track from like an actual like inclusion perspective. Is it simply for it to sound better? Is it purely an inspiration thing without rationale necessarily provided to It's nice. I think that the thing with this track is it's very soothing, even regardless of some of the harsher, crisper kind of textures. But at the same time, I need things to stop occasionally. And I know it's about to stop. There's just been a constant nature to it that is. It's basically, I think we're trying to do a bell curve of like either in the middle it's big and then going out at the sides. The bell curve with the lump really near the end. I think that's what we're trying to do with most of these tracks. Sometimes we go up a little bit. Occasionally we come down, but that's the emphasis I get from this. And I just think that even in a 3-minute 26 like track, like you could have had some filtering or some extra instruments or something like that. And forgive me if there was. It's just a theme can sound great. I'm not sure if having the throaty kind of, you could have potentially had everything cut out apart from the cello or whatever that low string section was. At like the 2/3 mark, you could have had everything cut out, the boom, and then like kind of like maybe had it filtered so that you had things come in, just to kind of like switch up the entire palette of the track as opposed to introducing a new track and then continuing to like with the rest of it, with a sense of relative sameness regardless of the new layer on top or below. Do you know what I mean? I don't know. Sometimes I go on tangents, but I'm hoping I'm making sense there. It's still a good song. Like, all of these are great songs. I don't really have any complaints about them. The worst I've said is that I think that there could be like more of a reverb tail on one of the organ parts. And I think part of that comes down to the fact that with these reviews, the reason I do these reviews, and this is something that's often misconstrued, is that I do them to basically let the listener know, hey, you're doing good. Or maybe not the listener, but like the person who wrote it. The point of the reviews I do is to let the listener know, or the person go, yeah, you're doing a good job. There are some things we can improve, but most of the time we're getting it absolutely right. And this is why I appreciate being able to review work like this in its full format, because I can really get stuck in if there is something there. But I also understand that Glenn Murawski at this point in his career is really kind of nailing all the ticking all the boxes. So it's harder to find stuff to complain about. But we do have Mid-Century Table. This is the art on the left here, and I'm very happy with the album so far in general. Nearly through the second volume, which is kind of crazy that we're going this quickly through it, but it's part of that is because it's instrumental, you know. The interpretation is whatever you want it to be. Yeah, I mean, I'm just enjoying the general vibe of what's going on with these synths here, how they kind of fall away and come back and flutter around a bit, the whole note kind of accents like we had in a few of the other tracks with the melody parts. More pad sequences. Some interesting sus harmonies there that I wasn't necessarily expecting. But that had a sort of a little bit of neutrality to it that can sometimes be helpful to not make it so black and white. It does kind of sound like the sun's shining and coming in and there's a great new day ahead. I think this is one of the stronger compositions in respect to how it actually matches with that. It's a very different environment to like The Purging Begins or, you know, even Dragon Cloud Castle or Lunar Maelstrom. I think most people can relate to being in a room with the sun pouring and having breakfast if they have windows in their house. The clicky cymbals are fine. They are leveled well in the mix and not cutting into anything else too much. I think they were there to make the track more interesting by adding a different rhythmic layer. I've seen some movement perhaps. It does help to a certain extent. I mean, I don't really feel the need to say anything else. Like, a lot of the comments that I've made, and this is, I suppose, the weakness of the way I do these reviews, is that when you get to a certain point in an album, and you're used to hearing a lot of what the musician is doing, you know, like we have an intrinsic, so like, we have a focus on having strings at some point within these compositions. We seem to really love the sound of them. And I think that for the most part it works really well, and I suppose that's a way of establishing a tonal consistency across an album, especially when the lots of synthetic elements, is by having like acoustic instruments. I don't necessarily know if having those lower strings always works, but it's something we're doing at the moment. I'm not necessarily averse to it. There is, you know, a great sense of what's going to happen next to this track. We didn't resolve it. We usually go bum, bum, bum. Maybe we didn't want it to be too obvious. Maybe we wanted musicians who are familiar with how it would usually go to be like surprised by it, because if that was the case, you won there, my dude. I was surprised that we didn't resolve the chord there. I thought it would be a nice way to finish, especially with a track that's relatively peaceful sounding, but that's okay. We don't need to do it. Still a good track, you know. For the most part, I could understand why they were connected, and that's great. And now we have some pixel art. We have Snowfall in the Street, track number 14, and the last track off of the volume 2 of this trilogy. I like the bells, the jingles, the softness of the strings, and the other pretty little inclusions they're making it sound like snow falling on pavement. I would be disappointed if we got too heavy with this. I feel as if it needs to be fluffy. You can get away with this kind of texture. Like, I mean, like, I don't know if you guys played a game called Stardew Valley. They do have some sequences like this in their video game music, especially in winter. It gives a more sort of sinister tone though when you get down to that range with the sequences. It's like, what is the snow trying to cover? You know what I mean? I mean, the offbeat snares, the unconventional sort of rhythmic phrasings there are intriguing. Dun, dun, dun. Dun, 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 dun. To be fair though, I think it suits it better than just like, I don't know, kick, snare, kick, snare, kick, snare, you know, they're kind of a generic kind of beat. There's a... Ah, yeah, we're coming back with the strings in this part. Kinda makes me wonder if we're using an erhu or something like that. It does kind of sound like an erhu, if I'm honest. If you know, you know. Why the more sort of like intense textures? I guess we'll never know. This is of course a personal observation and a concept of what a track is about, you know. But no, it's charming. It did sound like snow for the first half. I don't necessarily know if I personally found it to be rather snowy near the end. It's almost like we couldn't have had a 2-minute track because we needed to have the 3:15 to kind of have the synths and the other percussive elements and everything like that, have enough time for them to be sort of like worthwhile including. I think this is maybe the only track where I feel as if you could have had less time with it, or even had the track be more naked than it was and not as structured, and it would have worked just fine. I know that there's a formula for making kind of snowy music, and that's why we knew exactly what to do at the start. And I know that it's personal sort of like experience and like a perception of an artwork, but at the same time, yeah. It's not bad. The theme itself was kind of ambiguous sounding behind it. I still am very happy with the vast majority of this second volume of art-inspired tracks. I look forward to reviewing their last 7 tracks soon, so see you then. So we're back for Art-Inspired Tracks album, or volume 3, the last third of the trilogy, tracks 15 to 21. Where's the art for that? Okay, so we found the art for it. We're going to listen through the rest of these 7 tracks, and then we're going to do the conclusion on the entire thing, so that'll be really interesting, I'm sure. But open world. Choir vocals to start off. Not bad. Because it's worth noting this is a new album, you know. There was time between these volumes. These are different stages potentially in Glenn's life. The string instruments here are wonderful. I love the clutter to them. The anticipation, you know. The excitement. Not quite too busy yet. We had a lot of synth sequences and a lot of like heavy stuff coming on in some parts of the last couple of volumes, so we'll see how we go here, whether we rely on those string accents or not. Does it sound like an open world? It sounds like someone opening up their eyes to a brand new future, you know? It's kind of wonderful when you think about it that we even have like artwork like this to get inspired by lots of talented people on the internet, eh? I like the more defined direction for some of the percussion within this album so far. It's no, we're not sticking to traditional sort of eighth note grooves or anything like that or fills, but even if we're including 16ths or something quicker than that, we've still got a easy, sort of semi-easy to follow, like hi-hat kind of like concept. The kicks, if they're placed on the offbeat, continue on the offbeat for different parts of different repetitions. It's great. There's a continuity despite the uniqueness of some of the grooves. I mean, we are bringing, of course, the focus of the strings into the later half like we have in previous tracks. I don't typically necessarily mind it. I think the entry is a little bit cleaner here. We don't have as much of a kind of a push into the low register as we did with some of those cello or low parts in these sections earlier. There's a wonderment of play, like a playfulness to some of these string melodies. At least with the tone. It's as if the music is calling out to you, you know? I can understand the inspiration. And we don't resolve it. We have a habit of not wanting to resolve our compositions into like the root note or anything like that. I think maybe we might see that as a little bit cheesy. Maybe it sounds like we're finishing the album right after the first track. I'm not sure. But that was open world anyways. I can understand why we've called it that. We got Tactical, track number 16, with a lady, undercover lady with a pretty hella interesting assault rifle or machine gun whatever she got going on there. About to cause a ruckus. It does sound like we're going undercover. Oh. It's like a really hardcore spy film or something like that. Are those like fourths? Those are the surprise intervals in music, you know, the fourths. Second only to augmenteds. Like, we're not really trying to sort of illustrate, I think, in the harmony or the main motif or any of the string parts or really anything going on in this composition that the breach is going well, you know. There's danger that lurks around the corner. Nice use of the kind of glitchy cymbals in comparison with 16th note. Constant 16th note to those rim taps or something like that. Combination at 60 to 30 seconds on the percussion. Frenetic, energetic, and suspenseful. Synth line? Wasn't necessarily expecting a melody here, but I'll take it. I mean, like, to be fair, I was. Usually we do add another element at the end to kind of zazz it up and be like, hey, we're developing. Like a solo section in a track without vocals. I think that's maybe it, that sometimes we have a strong lead come in, and amongst a whole lot of other layers that are kind of adding to more of a cohesive harmony, and sometimes it's a little bit sharp, a bit too boisterous, but I don't necessarily mind it here. Oh, that was a cool shift there. I don't know if that was a parallel or not, but that was fine. Not really sure if I was thoroughly convinced by the chord progressions at the end. Why did we get so kind of alternative with the way that we put them together? Why did we sort of depart from, specific chord progressions and stuff like that? Why like key signatures and stuff like that? Why was there such an edginess with the way we did the specific triads and everything like that? And the percussion made sense. The boom, boom, some of the basic sort of lead concepts were fantastic. I just have questions about other elements, but overall a good track. Apparently track 17 was an artist. The art was done by a friend, so we don't have art for this one, but that's fine. Is that a cloud drum? Because they're really cool, man. I don't know if you've ever tried a cloud drum. I would recommend trying a cloud drum. They're pretty awesome. The minimalism is welcome. It's easy to follow along to whichever direction we're going in. Oh yeah, I was wondering if we're going to add something new here. We had like a group of 16 bars or something like that, or maybe 32. It's a whistly kind of mildly stressful texture in that high range that I don't necessarily know if I like. It's kind of like when someone tries to rubs their finger around the rim of a cup and it makes the squealy sound, I mean, it kind of makes you you can imagine watching an artist paint a painting or make a sculpture or something like that, I suppose. It's like the little, those little kind of blunt parts are more, with the delays are more like the clock ticking away. Just see you got the banner up here, Glenn Murawski. He's got all his material on Bandcamp as far as I'm aware, so if you want to check it out, feel free to do so via his Bandcamp. I'll put links in the description and everything like that. The sound design is fantastic. I have a lot of love for that. No complaints whatsoever about the way that the instruments are put together, like the choices of the timbres and everything like that. And some of the there's a fundamental understanding of music theory and composition from what I'm hearing there, Yeah, okay. I feel like we could have worked into that. It hits really hard. I suppose, if you open up the art for it, you can see the string section right here. So you can kind of see how and why we would be having a lot of it in here. It does add a dramatic sort of suspense to things. It's got a lot of emotional weight when they're carried well. I'm just not sure if I really like the tone of that. Like, this is prettier in my mind, because you've got more in that mid-range there to kind of flesh out and add a bit of oomph to it. I think this is what helps carry it without needing the drums, you know. For example, you don't need a sense of pace to it. You're existing while the artist creates. I mean, it just kind of stays there with these whole notes the entire time. The harmony just kind of glistens across. And it just finishes like that, just bluntly. To be fair, though, I did kind of stop it about the point. If it was going to cut, it was going to cut, right? So, to be fair, it's not the blunt. Like, I remember there was one track where, like, I was wanting a synth or something like that to go longer than it did, or the organ to go longer than it did. But you know, aside from that, it's great. Honestly, it's been fantastic to revisit Glenn Murawski's work. I did it a while ago now, but yeah, we've developed as a musician, as an artist, and I'm thankful for that. And then we have Elemental City, track number 18. Elemental City, the haven of light, so to speak. We like our big cities, don't we? Our big magical cities and Fantasyland with like lots of waterfalls and lots of teal and blue colors. Again, we've got those synthesized in the low end, the slow pan synths there, make it sound very magical and otherworldly. Kind of reminds me of the PlayStation 1, the intro song when you turn on the track or turn on the machine. I think the studio production, though, from what I've heard, is really well leveled, and I haven't really spoken too much about the audio production in general. It's just the leveling and the panning of things, and it's basically it's, for the most part, it's commercial grade. I can't tell whether the parts I didn't like where like it came in too bluntly were like actual mixing issues or like they were just stylistic decisions. I mean, Occam's razor is they were deliberate stylistic decisions because we obviously know how to mix and master tracks. I like the occasional percussion. We've had similar concepts for our other tracks. I think we've really kind of found a point where we're happy at this part. There's like a cool response actually between some of the leads and those drum parts, a little snare and tom fills. with the interesting panning of like the filtered snare or something like that on the left side, with everything else happening on the right or the center, which is kind of cool. Are we gonna let it resolve to a major? Because that would be gorgeous, you know, like you have like a big city that is surrounded by waterfalls. That's clearly a positive thing. Even if you have it like end on a 7th or a 9th or something. Or an add 2, as I found out today, which is a chord that has 1, 3, 5, 9 without the 7. I always thought that a 9th just had 1, 3, 5, 9, but apparently that is an add 2, so, you know, never mind. Different strokes for different folks. Yeah, how are we going to end this? This is going to be the important part. Oh, beautiful. No, I'm happy with that. I think that this was a good effort. It was done in a way where it was kind of classy how we kind of came out of it. At the same time, I'm not sure whether or not I would have preferred for there to have been a longer finish on it. I'm not sure why we needed to end it under 4 minutes when we've comfortably had tracks near to 5 before, but that's okay. That's okay. Nonetheless, I think, aside from an abrupt finish, the rest of the track came through together really well, and I'm happy with it. We seem to have returned. Oh, you can just. Oh, so like I just realized that you can like, if you click out of it, you can click on the photo to make it big. I didn't realize that you could do that. So that's silly me this entire time. I haven't realized that you can just click on the image to make it like full screen. The more you know. But this is it's the image for number 19, Village in Tuscany. Will it sound like it? We're starting with the strings this time. The cello in the mid, slow violins or violas. I can understand to an extent why we are, you know. A lot of classical works were founded in Europe, you know. Italy, France, Germany. Almost like a concerto or something like that, you know? I mean, it is a duo at this point, though, to be fair. I was going to say a quartet, but there's not 4. But there's a lovely where I can't tell if these are real. Like, I can't tell if these are real strings or if we have sampled them. It's very difficult for me to tell. It kind of grips at you a little bit at the same time. No, there is definitely more than 2 strings here, because I can hear 2 up in the high ranges. They kind of go counter to each other. When one goes up, the other goes down, etc. There's a big conversation going on between them. It's like we don't want to get to a point in the track where we let the root note resolve, so we are constantly kind of getting the instruments to argue against each other to make it last longer. I mean, like, I understand, like, from a composition perspective, why we don't want melodies or harmonies to resolve, because it sounds like the song's ended, especially in the through composed piece, but still. What I will say though is that I don't think that it would have been a wise idea to include any synthetic or electronic elements within this piece, considering how we started. And the fact that we haven't felt inclined to do so shows a modicum of like, which by the way, I don't mean that in a patronizing way. It shows that we understand that there are limits to what we can get away with in terms of experimentation, even when the idea is to be inspired by art. There's still a bit of nuance to communicating that. It just ends like that. I mean, like, when I look at electronic music composers since 2004, Glenn Murawski has drawn from several creative influences, including rock, classical, and electronica to create music that is pensive and contemplative in nature. I can definitely hear those elements. Mostly the classical and electronica, though, to be fair. But that's okay. I mean, obviously with the string section we have in this, there are those classical elements, you know, like the 1700s, 1800s, etc. But also some sort of neoclassical stuff. Like it's a little bit avant-garde almost, with like how we got the strings to fluctuate against each other, but not to a point where it was disconcerting or it degraded the listening experience. I can understand again why that fits the mold for this album, because again, it's looking at an artwork and going, this makes me think of this. And I think you really cannot go wrong with that concept. Who is to tell you that you're wrong if you get inspired by something, right? Just want to give a shout out as well to all the wonderful artists that have been featured in here. Like, I haven't mentioned their names, but I mean, he's listed all the artwork in here as well, to be fair. So I'll definitely link the Bandcamp page and you guys can find all the art in his Bandcamp page here. I'll make it a bit bigger. Yeah, you can see like track 1 art, track 2 art, etc. So that's what I'm talking about. Yeah, anyways, let us continue. We've got 2 more tracks to go. We have got the African Queen, track number 20. Okay, that was a cool idea to have the kind of pan flute here. It's very pretty sounding, you know? I think the hand drums and the boom. I don't know what instrument that is, though, to be fair. I feel ignorant. Hang on a minute. Would that just be like a plucked bass instrument, like a low string, wouldn't it? No, that's a double bass. Okay, so there's 2 different, there's an A and a B section here that has been clearly represented here. That's good, we can follow along with it. So we've got 16ths for triplets. But the swing rhythm with the 16ths. That is a spicy combination of elements there, Mr. Murawski. But the accents on each of the 2 come together in a way where they show off their best elements and don't interfere with each other too much. I think this simple guitar motif kind of labeled on top of the other pan flute motif with the frenetic rhythm stuff, it's just crazy enough to work. We've literally just gone, oh, one, another, and in this instance I don't necessarily think it's a bad thing. It's just at the cusp of the bell curve where I think if we added another layer it would be too much. Okay, we're adjusting the lead guitar, that's cool. Extending the use of that lead instrument there. with a very complex sort of groove between the various rhythmic elements, with 3 or 4 different motifs, issuing just a really colorful track in it. Wonderful. No, I think that was really respectful, actually. I'm never sure how we're going to go with music, because there's specific instruments that like are in a lot of African music, and African music is a tremendous generalization. There's a lot of different instruments they have over there, and I'm glad that we managed to find the tones and timbres and associated to really kind of make it pop and make it work for the aesthetic. The inspiration is strong, and I'm really glad that Glenn is at a point in his time as a songwriter and composition where he can make these things happen in a way that all the boxes are ticked. But that was probably one of my favorites off the album so far. But we've got a Betrayal and Sacrifice, track number 21. So I'm just going to find that one for the art, and then it'll basically be us for today, won't it? The Last Supper. Yeah, The Last Supper by Leonardo da Vinci. Crazy, dude. Craziness. Betrayal and Sacrifice. How are we going to pull this one off? Because this is quite a difficult one maybe to describe or get right if you're overthinking it, but again, purely from a traditionally inspirational thing, it'll be cool to see what we do. There's the occasional oscillating with the vocal chops at the start. It's are those sitar takes that have had their text softened? Like, what is that word that they're saying there? Is this the texture for the sake of having a lead that's a mysterious vocal? Beautiful choir vocals though nonetheless. It's almost like a vocoder synth or something like that. Well, the occasional synth layers are the stars in the sky within this, the brightness that shines above. There's a sparkle and a glow to it despite the title. Because how are we going to finish off such an extensive trilogy? When you got that slight little bass boom, 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 you know, that kind of accents some type of rhythm to follow along to. With everything else being whole notes, or the sequences coming in just kind of buzz away. But it's very mystical. It does kind of give you space mentally to look inside yourself when you listen to music like this. That's the beauty of not having vocals, is that you don't feel guided by them. It almost seems like we aren't really sure what... No, because I'm reading too much into this. Again, this is about Glenn's inspirations from looking at artwork. I keep trying to bring it back to the person, but I remember the purpose of the album. Betrayal and sacrifice. That's the tale I'd like to hear on like the other times where I heard it kind of go bruh. That there, just letting that last instrument go boom and kind of resolve on that note there. Because I think there was a resolution there, harmonically. And that was the finish of it. That is the entirety of this album review. 21 tracks, man. But we did it. We did it in 3 sessions, and I think we did it properly. Because this is my conclusion to my review of Glenn Murawski's album, Art-Inspired Tracks, the Complete Trilogy Remastered, which is basically his Art-Inspired Tracks Volume 1, 2, and 3. I think this album, as you know, we've already talked about what the album was, but in case I talked about this not enough during the review, basically this album is basically about Glenn looking at art, appreciating it, and writing music about it. That's it. I talked about what the individual tracks were and how I felt the music sort of interacted with it as we went through. There were no vocals either, so I feel like aside from some vocal chops or some choir sort of synth vocoder stuff going on, there's not a lot really to say about vocals within this. So I mean, if we know what each of the tracks was about, or at least my interpretation of it, and if we understand that this is we understand the point of the album, then it's basically just how things were implemented. And I suppose when you're talking about the inspiration from art, there's really no right or wrong way of doing it. It's not like we necessarily need to pay attention to traditional verse-chorus structures, for example, because it is an instrumental piece or an instrumental album. You don't need to worry about trying to make it catchy or anything like that, because it's a through-composed piece and it's a vibe rather than simply being something to kind of like get the listeners hooked onto. Granted, there's still clearly a tremendous amount of effort put in by Glenn, and I think it's fantastic music for the most part. I don't think this was here to sell a few easy records. I think this is a detailed listen that gives you an insight into Glenn, who they are as a person and a musician, and what this art means to them. And I think it's a really unique sort of take on, combining different inspirations that I haven't really seen a lot of. Like, I haven't seen someone try and do an album like this before. I think it's really cool. It's an interesting, unique take that I hope Glenn continues to do more stuff in this direction, like to try and think outside of the box, But that's good. So far, I think that for the most part, we pulled things off. I mean, there were lots of different themes there. So I'm just going to talk about the main instruments that I heard, how they were sort of done, and how they affected like the different themes and everything like that. I don't think there was a song where the theme didn't match what we were discussing within it. The only one that really comes to mind is Village in Tuscany, where I was unsure as to why it was so busy. I'm not sure whether this is something Glenn had experienced. Maybe they went to Tuscany, maybe they saw a lot of musicians there, for example. But then it's more about the inspiration, so it's like maybe that's how Glenn thought it would sound to have all those different string parts kind of playing like that. And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. I think we need to bypass the concept of they're doing things wrong and just accept that it's what it is, which is potentially not helpful for a review. Like the goalposts are gone when you're trying to do something like different like this. The tracks, at least we can talk about like the length, for example, where These through composed tracks were typically about 3 to 5 minutes in length. Most of them were between like 2 and 4. And I think that was a really good length for instrumentals. I understand that sometimes there can be more stuff you want to say, more instruments you want to layer, etc. But I don't think it necessarily benefits the actual kind of performance itself or the listener's experience to extend things beyond their shelf life. And what I mean by that is, if you've got a motif and you're needing to layer stuff and you get to the tippity top of that bell curve and you can't add more without just overloading the arrangement, stop doing that. Just accept that you've reached your peak, bring things down a bit, then maybe introduce a new instrument. Because if you go and just continue to add more and more and more to it, layers to an arrangement, this is not something I had an issue with Glenn or anything like that, but I've heard other songs where they've done this, and it's like, it will become boring because you know there's going to be more and more and more. That's the blessing and the curse with the ballad format, for example, where you have like the piano and the vocals, and then like the bass comes in, and the drums, and then the guitar, and then you have like solo sections here, the vocals coming up the entire time. It's like comfort food for people, where like, I don't think ballads are bad, but they're predictable. There might be a key change to surprise things. But what I liked about this music, I suppose, is that Glenn, he traditionally he typically took a concept on an instrument, whether it was this massive string focus he had, or like a woodwind, or maybe he wanted synth stuff going on, some synth leads or some pads, etc., made it all kind of whooshy with a bit of automation of the panning and stuff like that. He had an instrument with a main idea, and then he would basically try to get stuff to either go in the same rhythm with it, like with the percussion or the synthesizers or the basses or whatever. He'd try and get a sense of unison with the rhythms for the most part, and it would just be fantastic. The only exception really to this that I could hear was African Queen, where we did, there were some polyrhythms there, or there was swing stuff with straight sixteenths, and I don't mind that at all, because I think we have a clear understanding of music theory and composition, where Glenn understands that if you're going to have tricky stuff going on with different rhythms between instruments on a swing to straight 4/4 basis, you cannot have the accents be the same. There kind of like intricate call and response there, with call and response being a thing that was actually happening a lot here. There'd be one instrument that would talk and another one would go back, and things would go backwards and forwards, and it'd be fantastic. And I think that's wonderful. I think that was something maybe in State of Refuge, where there was like constant conversations between left and right, stereo field, etc. And I like the fact that like there's that kind of imagery in music. For the most part, I enjoyed the tones of the various instruments outside of the studio production. There was some low strings that came in a bit bluntly then. I just don't think that their entrance was requisited. I don't think it was deserved, because sometimes we'd already had like a really pleasant theme established, and then just like the buzz at the low end, and it's like, yeah, great, I know it sounds cool, but how is this helping? How is this helping to get the listener into that contemplative vibe? I think, though, that at the same time we may have been aware that we couldn't get another minute out of a piece where we didn't have an extra layer in there, but then that's an argument for simply not having more. There is no shame in having shorter tracks. I'm not saying that Glenn should have cut those parts out. Some parts, the low end of the buzzy kind of like low strings, they kind of chopped into the mix a little bit. And there were a lot of smooth kind of reverb or delay soaked textures or pads or whatever, and it kind of changed things up a little bit extremely for my tastes. But at the same time, I can't really fault him for that, because like nothing is perfect, and for the most part I'm really happy with what was going on here. I do think that songs like Tactical, where things are a little bit more edgy, contrasting to Dragon Cloud Castle, contrasting to, or even The Monsters Cry, which is horrifically depressing, contrasting to the glory of Stalwart and Ready for Battle, an open world, and artist's craft as well. Like, there was a lot of tonal range there, lots of different themes where you could clearly understand that Glenn was genuinely inspired by these pieces, and it was great and a blessing to hear him. And I think that it was a smart idea to revisit this trilogy, to remaster them, just to get everything in one kind of take, because it shows his growth over that period, the art that he'd looked at, and it was fantastic. I mean, I think Glenn's been going since 2004, so that's a long time. That's obviously nearly 20 years, but I think the experience has paid off, and I think that he's definitely more than capable. I don't think there was a weak track in here. I don't think there were any moments there where I was like, why am I listening to this? What is this? How does this theme relate to the picture? We clearly had enough knowledge behind, in all areas to be able to get it to work the way we did. I think the occasional sort of like vocal chops or layerings as well were a nice sort of way to humanize the track and make it less kind of like obviously instrumental. And I think for the most part, there was not a note out of place, and even if there was, it was done on purpose. The complexity of the arrangements and the motifs reflected the complexity of the situation emotionally. Sometimes we had less layers because things were simpler and more easy to understand. Occasionally we went a little bit overboard with like the cuts and like various parts of the frequency spectrum, but that's fine. It's all good. The studio production, recording, mixing, mastering was solid. Really happy with how it sounded. I think that Glenn nailed the EQing, filtering, and panning of all of the instruments. Occasionally, again, as I've mentioned several times now, there was slight low end resonances with some of the string bits, which I think cut a little bit deeply. But again, it might have been a deliberate thing to kind of like shock the listener, that it might have been something they were inspired to do. It's tricky, but aside from slight leveling issues, and I think that, and those are very slight, by the way. It's probably just me, to be fair. I'm happy to second guess myself on that count, but I think also it's worth noting that we had basically these little bits at the end of some of the tracks where they could have extended a little bit more, and I liked how the last track did. You know, like there was one part that was like an organ, and I was like, damn, it should have kept going a little bit more. But that's fine. That's how Glenn wanted to do it, so that's okay. And it was nice to in the stereo field, the drums, the bass, the synth sequences, the strings, piano, anything else you can name, not just in the frequency spectrum with very little resonant frequencies there. There was definitely a dynamic range to this recording as well, you know. No, he didn't kill the dynamic range by overcompressing or anything like that. And it was nice and loud without pumping. I mean, effectively, this is my review of Glenn Murawski with their album Art-Inspired Tracks, the Complete Trilogy Remastered. If you did enjoy this, please do go show them some love via their various social medias and a Bandcamp page, and stay cool and stay safe. And please remember, support your local musicians and artists at this point in time, as they have more than ever with all the crazy stuff going on in the world, and I will catch you in the next review. Spiderhands Out.